Good morning. Thank you all for being here. It is our pleasure to welcome Brooklyn Borough President Eric Adams to Abney this morning. He is a lifelong public servant, and he is someone the more you know, the more you admire. What impresses me most is how he draws on his personal experiences to make our city a better place for everyone. He was born in Brownsville, raised in Bushwick, and at the age of 15, in a life-defining moment, he and his brother were arrested. At the precinct, they were taken into the basement, and there they were brutally beaten by police officers. It is a truly horrific story. The most incredible part about the story, though, is what came out of it. He decided to become a cop, the type of cop he thought our city and our neighborhoods deserved, and to change the NYPD from within. He spent 22 years keeping our neighborhood safe, working in precincts including in Greenpoint, Clinton Hill, and Fort Greene. In 1995, he co-founded the organization 100 Blacks in Law Enforcement Who Care, an initiative focused on improving the NYPD's relationship with the community. And after his retirement as a police captain, the borough president was elected to the New York State Senate, where he continued to push for reform, organizing support to bring an end to the NYPD stop and frisk policy, leading efforts to increase gun control, and promoting government transparency. As Brooklyn Borough President, he has worked tirelessly to better connect Brooklyn residents with our government and provide opportunities. For example, he co-founded the Brooklyn Pipeline with Medgar Evers College, a program that prepares kids for college in struggling school districts. He launched a digital app for community board membership to help residents better participate in local government. He's been an advocate for working mothers. He helped create Family Friendly Brooklyn, an initiative that provides nursing women with comfortable spaces to feed their children. He has prioritized fiscal responsibility, requesting top-to-bottom assessment of our city departments to make sure New York tax dollars are spent wisely. He called for more efficiency in government, including a municipal car share system to take more city-owned vehicles off our streets and save taxpayer dollars. Feels like that's like, duh, that is such a good idea. And building on his own experience of having type 2 diabetes, he's become an advocate for plant-based and healthier food options in our schools and throughout Brooklyn. Borough President Adams is a man of action. He sees a problem, he does what's necessary to fix it. And we all look forward to hearing from him this morning. First, I'd like to recognize some of the public servants who are here today, Councilmember Keith Powers and Police Commissioner Dermot McShay. Thank you both for coming. Before I turn the podium over to the Borough President, I just want to emphasize one point. In a time where people mistake tweets for leadership, his actions truly stand out. He took a traumatic encounter as a teenager, and he became a cop. And when being an officer wasn't enough, he founded an organization to help make things better and help the NYPD from within. His time as a student in Brooklyn Public Schools and paying his way through college drive him to improve opportunities for the next generation of Brooklyn school children. And his recent scare with type 2 diabetes has him engaged in public health. In fact, in true Brooklyn hipster fashion, he is a vegan now and is happy to try and convince you to be one too. He's a man of principle and action. It is our pleasure to have him here with us today. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm welcome to Borough President Adams.
It was a wonderful intro by Stephen. I wish he would have written the Post op-ed this morning. I love this city. I believe in this city. I protected this city. And I'm concerned about the city. And anytime you are in a love affair, you get in disputes. And you have to navigate your way out with conversations to build a stronger bond. And no matter how we look at some of the economic indicators that points and place a rosy picture. We are in some extreme, challenging times. And I want to spend this morning talking about this city and what I believe we need to do to address some of these challenges. When you think about the challenges around climate crises, around radical hate, around rising real inequality, as I see my friend Sheena right here from the United Way, these are real issues and real concerns. And not at the least of our worries is the automation's assault on jobs, and I'm going to get to that in a moment. It's something that everyone that desires to be a citywide leader must engage in this very real concern and conversation. We've been through tough times before, like in the 70s, and that's what caused Abney to come together, a place of men and women that wanted to save New York City. But our greatest test may be the one we face in the coming decade. This morning, I want to do a few things. I want to give you my assessment on the dysfunction of our city and cities across America. I want to share with you how this dysfunction is deepening our problems as we sit here today. I want to tell you about the path I see to properly govern our city, enabling us to face the great challenges ahead of us. Finally, I want to touch on a few pressing issues facing New York City right now and some of the upstream solutions I see to address them. Now, what do I mean by the term upstream? Archbishop Desmond Tutu put it clear. There comes a point when we need to stop just pulling people out of the river. We need to go upstream and find out why they are falling in. My friends, these words could not be more applicable if the Archbishop was talking about the East River. Because as a city, we are trapped in a cycle of governing from crisis to crisis, always dealing with the immediate problem and never what's the cause. Look at NYCHA, education, homelessness, healthcare. We let problems turn into disasters. Every day, our city is overwhelmed with crisis. These days, it is getting more and more difficult to see the difference between 911 and 311. Follow this sentence. The most important thing in this city is that the heart of our city government lies in its agencies. If your agencies are dysfunctional, it doesn't matter how much tax dollars you put in this city. And in fact, this city is like my son used to be. He would spend his money, then he'd place his hands in my pockets. But our agencies operate as if they're in different bodies, inefficiently pumping the flow of government or even blocking it altogether. By failing to effectively communicate with each other and governing reactively from crisis to crisis, agencies' actions too often prevent progress, and worse, they create crises for other agencies failing New York City. To borrow again from Archbishop Tutu, agencies at one part of the stream are throwing New Yorkers into the river while others are trying to pull them out. And to understand a full scope of the evolution of who I am as a person in government now, I must give you a brief overview of my 35 plus years of governmental service. Many of you don't know, I started my career as a computer programmer and police officer in the New York City Police Department. At the time, we were living in a different city. We were experiencing 2,000 homicides a year, over 90,000 robberies. Every car had a no radio sign. We used to have a Benzie box where you would pull out your radio because you didn't trust it, and we would have a club. That wasn't a prestigious group for you young people. It wasn't Abney or Rebney. It was a device to protect your steering wheel. We surrendered. We gave up. We built entire industries around the reality that we could not be safe. And we were broken as officers. We were experiencing PTSD, knowing that our communities would be in a constant spiraling impact of crime. I was that computer programmer that used to report annually to the federal government through something called the Uniform Crime Reporting System. We would send the reports off monthly. We were governing and policing this city through the rear view mirror and not the front windshield. A man came to me by the name of Jack Maple. He's no longer with us. Jack stated, "Eric, we don't have to be unsafe. Under the leadership of former Commissioner Bill Bratton, we assembled a team in the Transit Police Department that created the first of its kind real-time crime-fighting mechanism. It allows us in the Transit Police to stop policing from the rear-view mirror, but from the front windshield. We went from being reactive to proactive to predictive. 3 years of that program, crime in the subway system dropped by over 35%. Bill Bratton left the Transit Police and became the commissioner of the New York City Police Department, and the second evolution of real-time policing took place. They created CompStat. And out of CompStat, in the first year of CompStat real-time policing, we saw homicides in this city for the first time drop by 450 homicides. 25 years later, we have not experienced any level of a serious increase in crime. And I say that with an asterisk. We became safer. And it was a pivotal period for this city. We understood that an agency's action did not impact their immediate issues, but it also impacted the other parts of the city. Just look at the police department's primary goal of keeping us safe. It also impacted on tourism. In 1991, in the city of New York, we only had 29 million tourists with $10 billion in economic revenue. In 2018, when we continue being a safe city, we had 65 million tourists with $44 billion in economic revenues. We changed Times Square for a place where it was degradation and poisonous to families into a safe place to bring tourists, and we saw the economic revenue from it. Public safety became an economic stimulus package that we hired low-skilled people. We were able to have more hotels. People came to Broadway. We started to see the revenue flow, and it changed the narrative of New York. If every other agency in this city would have followed a real-time governing model, we would be living in a different city right now. But instead, we continue the model of creating a crisis for another agency to attempt to improve that crisis. Just look at the Department of Education. The Department of Education creates 3 crises. One, the crisis of inequity. It does not educate our children. And if you dig into the numbers, it does not educate black and brown boys. Difficult conversation, but real one. Year after year after year, either black and brown boys are born with a mutated gene that does not allow them to comprehend basic information, or we don't believe they can learn, or people are benefiting from the economic dysfunctionality of educating these young men. The Department of Education also creates our healthcare crisis. 70% of 12-year-olds have early signs of heart disease because of the food we feed them in the Department of Education. Department of Education is in conflict with the Department of Health and Mental Services. While we spend millions of dollars to fight childhood obesity, childhood diabetes, childhood asthma, the Department of Education feeds our children 960,000 meals that cause what? Childhood obesity, childhood diabetes, childhood asthma. That is why I push to get processed meat, a type 1 carcinogen, out of our schools so our babies can start having healthy food and live a healthy lifestyle. Why can't we have rooftop gardens on every school so our children can grow their vegetables and then serve it in the cafeterias and then learn about the multi-billion-dollar industry of urban farming and learn how to deal with the issues in their community? But let me tell you this. The Department of Education also creates our law enforcement crisis. 80% of the young men and women at Rikers Island don't have a high school diploma or equivalency diploma by the time they arrive there. 1/3 of those who are 18-year-olds or younger read below a 5th grade reading level. 55% have a learning disability. 46 have mental health issues. Listen to this number. 30 to 40% are dyslexics. If we would have solved the problem upstream, we would not be dealing with the problem downstream. Instead of engaging a conversation about closing Rikers Island, the building, let's close the pipeline that feeds Rikers Island in the first place. And this is what we must do to move this city forward. Real-time governance is a complete paradigm shift. Complete paradigm shift. We can't continue to go from crisis to crisis. It's about going upstream and not throwing citizens in the river. Our DOB is another issue. God forbid if you're a contractor. God forbid if you're trying to open a restaurant and you have a tree out front and you have to speak with the Department of Parks. God forbid if you are a small business and someone is there constantly giving you fines and preventing you from running your business. God forbid if you have a frame hanging in your restaurant and it's made out of metal and not wood and you all of a sudden going to be hit with a substantial fine. Good people in the agency, bad system to run the agency. We need to give them the system they need to ensure buildings are safe, but to create a safe environment to grow the businesses in this city. Many of the unemployed and underemployed in our city are unskilled or underskilled. And for many, English is a second language. For those New Yorkers, two of the greatest potentials of employment is in the construction industry and in the restaurant industry. Over 400,000 people today is employed in those industries. Too many entrepreneurs, particularly in communities of color, they've thrown up their hands. They don't want to open business. It has become too costly to run a business in the city of New York. And it is an indictment on the entire city to have a job called a DOB expediter. Unimaginable. You need an industry to help you navigate a governmental agency. Remember what I said about the club? We're creating industries to navigate the dysfunctionality of our city. You should not need an expediter to navigate the DOE. So those of you who are expediters in this room, I'm trying to put you out of business. The failure to embrace real-time governance is causing our city to use last month's data, or in some cases, last year's data, to solve today's problem, just as we used to do in the police department. A once-a-year mayor's management report, an outdated 311 system, and antiquated models. They're antiquated models of running a city in the age of artificial intelligence. We need a real-time governance to address everything from congestion to contract performance, sanitation pickup, to infrastructure repair. 21st century, it's a 21st century vision to run a city like New York. It demands true real-time governance. And it demands a 24/7 leader that will roll up his sleeve, create the right team, the right visionaries, spend those 14 to 17 hours a day, 7 days a week, to move this city forward. Make no mistake, real-time governance takes significant investment to achieve our goals. But like any upstream investment, the savings downstreams are what save us from drowning. Real-time governance also means less waste, fraud, corruption through greater real-time oversight. Real-time governance means real-time analysis and greater agility to deploy solutions and resources, including course-correcting responses, long-lasting equity issues like our MWBE program. We can't keep talking about reaching the goals that we never reach, and annually we look back and say we were unable to reach. Unacceptable. Best faith effort has turned into no effort at all. We have to make sure it's done right, and we must monitor. I say this, if you don't inspect what you expect, it's all suspect. Real-time governance means the potential for greater engagement and trust from everyday New Yorkers, especially through transparent dashboards and access to enhanced open data that civic tech innovators can mobilize. Maybe most important, real-time governance is the only true way to pinpoint the root cause of problems. This is how we go upstream. What this looks like in our city, 3 major points. 1, we have to clearly identify our mission. What do we look like? Who are we as a city? What do we wake up together? What is every child, every adult, every corporation moving towards? And then every agency must identify their mission that is tied into the mission of the overall mission of the city. And then lastly, intra-agency communication to make sure that no agency is in conflict with the mission of another agency, such as we see with the Department of Health and Mental Services should not be in conflict with the Department of Education, and that's called communication. We start to accomplish this task by establishing real-time command centers for all of our agencies, equal in capacity to the real-time command center at One Police Plaza. I see Commissioner Dermot Shea here. All of you who are in government should go to One Police Plaza and visit and see how real-time governance is actually operating. You are safe because that system is in place, and don't ever forget that. In fact, during emergencies, all of our major agencies have a desk at the NYPD command center during emergencies. So here's the question. Why do we do it during emergencies? Why aren't we doing it every day? Why aren't we communicating every day instead of being in crisis before we communicate? There's enough room at One Police Plaza for our top agencies like NYCHA, DOE, ACS, HRA, and others to have a permanent place for leaders to monitor the activity of their agencies in real time and cross-communicate. That's a foreign term here. Cross-communicate with other agencies in real time. You cannot continue to govern your agencies from the ivory towers and the sterilized environment of your office space. You must get into your agencies on the ground level in a real way. What would that look like? Let's just take NYCHA, for example, which is basically operating the largest housing complex in the country. 400,000 residents, and we're using a pencil and paper system to monitor such a large entity like that. A real-time command center would enable NYCHA management to see what is actually happening on the ground. They can see what boilers are out, what is the length of outage, who is in charge of repairs, what is the track record of the installer, an analysis that shows which developments have an increase in emergency repairs. Why is that important? Sometimes a boiler installer will low bid the contract, then have a repeated occurrence of emergency repairs. Any of you that's a homeowner, you know that if you have emergency repairs, you're sometimes paying 2 to 3 times as much for the action. That is not how you run a system. We can interface GPS on devices to identify the locations of teams and time their responsiveness to locations in real time. We should not have to figure out where is the employee when you have the technology that can tell you where the employee is and how long it takes him to get there. This type of system will correct something we saw over last year. How do you install a roof on a building when you have a warranty that you could have it installed, but yet you use taxpayers' dollars to do it because you are not analyzing in real time your buildings, your complex, your apartments? We can't continue to govern in that fashion. NYCHA officials were not aware of these roof problems, but a real-time NYCHA stat, equivalent to CompStat, will collate data from different sources, and one building address would tell you everything about the building and greater complex. We would have an up-to-date database with repairs, who conducted them. Real-time data will allow us to deploy resources and identify waste and possible fraud. It would answer, why do we spend $30 million a year for scaffolds around NYCHA buildings every year? Who's profiting from that? It's not the taxpayers. These are the questions we have to answer. The style of management is not unheard of. It's already happening elsewhere. City Score is an initiative in Boston. For God's sake, they're beating us in baseball. Do we have to let them beat us also in technology? City Score informs the mayor and city managers about the overall health of the city at a moment's notice by aggregating dozens of key performance metrics, including daily statistics, into one number. Scores below 1 indicate the performance is below the target. Scores above 1 indicate the performance is exceeding the target. City Score launched in 2015. Boston has been able to use it to address several areas of constituent service delivery, from emergency response time to traffic sign repairs. In southern India, one of its largest states maintains a state-of-the-art center that uses drones, something we call for to inspect buildings. Why are we remaining on the ground while other countries are in the sky using the technology that's available? They use biometric or augmented technology, machine learning technology, and other early warning weather forecasting. The center consists of a giant screen that has the capability of displaying multiple matrix at the same time with various dashboards, including real-time grievances reports, visuals from closed-circuit cameras in strategic locations, and real-time progress on various projects. These systems are getting more and more sophisticated with machine learning and artificial intelligence. During the last few months, my team and I have been meeting with some of the top tech leaders in the city to discuss how do we move the city to real time. Google, Microsoft, Dell Computers, and some of the great minds around technology in the city. Many people say it's impossible. That's deja vu for me. They told us it was impossible to make this city safe, and we are safe because of that. In fact, we can start implementing real-time governance today. In addition to the capacity at One Police Plaza, we can start working on the critical update we need in interagencies, data sharing, and integration. That starts with 311. Where is our 311 2.0? Bloomberg laid it out. We should have continued and expand. That is how you build legacies, not in your time, but the continuation of time. Let's evolve and have an evolution of 311. The inability to have shared data and complaint records between various agencies and utilities lead to delays in issues and early resolutions to problems. Many problems cross over into various agencies and require intra-agency solutions, such as rat infestations, streetlight outages, cultured bike racks, and everyday challenges facing small businesses. These are just a few. And this is not just theoretical in goal. I want to just point out a few of the pressing issues in this city where real-time governance and having an upstream model can assist us. Let's go upstream with education, one of my favorite topics. Our greatest upstream opportunity and obligation is early childhood development. That is our greatest. And we cannot continue to divide ourselves over the conversation of parochial, public, charter, private. These are all of our children. All of our children. And when I say early childhood development, I want to be clear. Some of my colleagues talk about child care. I am not talking about child care. I'm talking about early childhood development. Follow the science. 80% of a child's brain's growth is between the ages of 0 to 3. 80% of neuron growth. If we don't capture that time, we're losing that child forever. We need to focus on the time that baby is in his or her mother's womb to the time that baby starts 3K. Our first engagement with children is 3K, pre-K. We're patting ourselves on the back. That is a downstream model. It is not an upstream model. We must go upstream to address this. And I have been speaking with upstream leaders like Bank Street College and studying the great work of Harlem Children's Zone's Baby College. We need to centralize the coordination between families, pediatricians, and the Department of Health and Hygiene and Education. All of these entities must come together, and they can't continue to be disjointed. We need to look at successful early intervention services. We need to heavily invest in professional development. How do we have teachers that are attempting to shape the minds of children, yet there is no training on how a brain absorbs information? Our teachers must know about synaptic connections, neuron growths, how information is retained. We must change the model of education and not simply do things we've always done because they were popular to do. That is not how we educate our children in the 21st century. Then we need to be on the ground. We need to go to the local communities and knock on doors, visit families and explain to them what that 0 to 3 moment is about, and give them real instructions and invest in that infrastructure. Now, let me tell you why this matters. Reports have shown that for every dollar we spend in a low economic area and give this early childhood education, we save $17 as societal benefits and savings, much of that going into increased earnings for our kids when they grow up. If we must invest in the future if we want to have a future. And then we have to fuel while we're flying. We have to focus on our K-12 schools. We can't continue to pull black and brown boys out of the depths of unemployment and neglect. We need to go upstream and build pipelines of opportunities. We need to invest in CTE, as we're doing in the Navy Yard. I was looking for Keon Price, who's our partner at the Navy Yard. Principal Price, please stand up. Doing an amazing job at the Brooklyn Navy Yard with our young people. We should be dedicating 1 or 2 hours a week to teach life skills, nutrition, financial literacy, health, how to shake a hand, how to sit in a room like this. We call them soft skills, but when you go through life without those skills, it is hard. Why are we underutilizing this collected body of people and showing them not only how to be academically smart, but emotionally intelligent? We are setting them up for failure, and I say let's stop doing that. We have to study and build on models that black and brown educators have created on a small scale, producing results. We've marginalized black and brown educators. We don't allow them to scale up their success. 2 of them are here today. David Banks from the Eagle Academy, George Leonard, the founder of Bedford Academy. Stand up, because this is your only opportunity to get your applause. What these men are doing, it's amazing. Yet they have to dig their hands in the cushions of their couches to find quarters to keep the lights on in their buildings and school. David's school, the Eagle Academy, is in Brownsville, ground zero for the inadequacy of education, and he's turning the lives around of those young men going to prestigious Ivy League schools. George Leonard, look at Bedford Academy and his numbers. The young people in his school exceeds expectation. And what he has been able to accomplish when he was there, and now he has moved on to other institutions, but he cannot scale up his success. He cannot find the support for his success. When he was in 2007, when Bedford Academy, he was there as the principal, it was rated the #1 high school in New York State for low-income students. He continued to excel. We need to study what they're doing, and we need to upgrade their models to allow our children to learn. Listen, black boys learn differently. Reality. By the time they sit in that classroom, they're not only dealing with academics, they're dealing with the trauma to get to that classroom. And if we don't start being honest about that conversation, then we're going to continue to be ineffective in educating a population that has historically been uneducated. And then we must follow the science on how children learn best. We need to infuse meditation and mindfulness training in our schools. And that means closely studying the viability of later school hours. The science is saying the sleep pattern of our children is not comparative to when they are starting school. Yet we're holding on to it because it's the sleep patterns that adults want. It's not about the adults. It's about our children. And if our children need a certain amount of hours to sleep to comprehend information and to have a healthy lifestyle, then darn it, let's give them that and let's build the system around them and stop building the system around adults. Upstream. Let's go upstream on foster care. Age 18, a child age out of foster care. They can stay to 21, but in reality, at 21, it stops. My son is 25 years old, and he's still calling me up saying, Dad, I need money. Imagine what your life would be about right now if you didn't have your family members until you were able to stand on your own. 600 to 700 young people age out each year. 22% of them have high school diplomas or equivalency. Only 22%. 78% are nowhere. 12% enroll in college. 3% graduate. If we invest just $50 million a year to give these children what's called life coaches. I have a life coach. I don't always listen to him, but I have one. If we would give them life coaches, the numbers change. 2 foster cares, establishment, infused life coaching, and they had a 90% participation achievement in high school with diploma or equivalency by age 21. Let's go upstream on health care. As it was mentioned, I was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. Many of you know my story. I was blind in one eye, losing sight in the other, had permanent nerve damage in my hands and feet. The doctor said, Eric, you're going to be blind in a year. Had an ulcer, cholesterol, high blood pressure. I had the American package. And instead of succumbing to that, I followed the same line of theory that I found when I saw myself on the police floor being beaten. I said, instead of having the pain, turn the pain into purpose. I decided not to live with diabetes, but to reverse diabetes. And I was able to do so by changing my diet. And within 3 weeks, my vision came back. 3 months, my nerve damage went away. And after that, my diabetes were in remission. My 80-year-old mother, after being diabetic for 15 years, 7 years on insulin, mommy is now insulin-free. And that's so important to me. It's important to me because mom has 6 children. She loves them all, but she adores me. We have to think upstream. And one of the most powerful upstream people in medicine is here today, Dr. McMacken. Dr. McMacken. She runs the Bellevue Project. Bellevue is the oldest hospital in America. She has the first of its kind, the partnership that we created together, Lifestyle Medicine. Currently, we have 173 people enrolled in the program. 688 people on the waiting list. We are doing something that has been foreign to medicine. We are reversing diseases. We're getting people off their medication. The real drug dealer is not the person standing on corners selling crack cocaine. It's a 3-piece suit pharmaceutical industry that has our families hooked on drugs all throughout their entire life. Everyone in this room has a loved one that is dealing with a chronic disease. We spend 80 cents on a dollar in America on chronic disease. Diabetes alone, 30 million Americans have diabetes. 84 million are on deck with pre-diabetes. 7 million are like me, had it and didn't even know it. This is unsustainable. We have to move in the direction that Dr. McMacken is doing and some of the other great doctors are doing about disease reversal. It is going to bankrupt our city, our state, and our country if we don't change direction and do it right. That's why we're expanding this model to Woodhall Hospital. Any citywide leader must have this program in every health and hospital corporation in the city. And I thank you, Dr. McMacken, for what you're doing. And let's go upstream on workforce development. Artificial intelligence predicts Oxford University study states that 47% of the jobs we are aware of right now that we're training our children for will not be here in 20 years. Think about that for a moment. And some of you may say those are the factory jobs. Those are the jobs of automation in cars and trucks. No. Go look up Lemonade Insurance. Lemonade Insurance is a new insurance company that uses machine learning to decide how they're going to write insurance contracts. They're getting rid of the brokers. Machine learning is going to change industries. And if we don't start preparing a workforce for that, we are in big trouble. And so that's why I thank my friend Jose Ortiz from New York City Employment and Training Coalition, who has been meeting with my team to look at how do we invest in bridge programs for those who lack the necessary skills. We may have programs in place, but there are individuals who lack the skills to get into those programs. We must put more money into the bridge programs. How do we refigure the system to support the development of talent and other system needs for the future of work on what it's going to look like and what it will look like? We have to think differently about the future of employment in this city. Let's go upstream with housing. We have a housing crisis in this city. And we have to think about the affordability on several income bands. As Sheena Wright report, United Way pointed out, 40% of New Yorkers have a sufficiency deficit. Our failure to go upstream has led to deepening homelessness, increasing housing insecurity for long-time families, threatening our status as a beacon of possibilities for anyone who want to make New York home. New York needs to be more aggressive. That's why I'm looking at how do we build on parking lots, over train tracks, over depots. There's so many more ways we can upzone in a smart way on our major thoroughfares so that we can have more housing. But we have to look beyond that as government land dries up. We have to look at what I believe is important to do, focus on and identify these small lot sizes. These small lot sizes are so important. They're identified as those with 1,700 square foot or 18 feet of frontage. Right now, our zoning laws prevent us from building on these small lot sizes, using modular housing and other building manners to build on these sizes. We need to examine that. Also, micro units. They already exist, but right now the zoning code is only allowing in what's called community facilities in supportive housing development. We need to go beyond that. Just 2 blocks from Borough Hall, we have 116 units of micro units within a development from breaking ground, and half being used for supportive housing and another half being used for affordable. Great match, great mix. Also on Carroll Street, you have 265, you have a couple of hundred units there with 265 to 360 square feet. They're real wins, and we need to further examine micro units in our zoning as we deal with the housing fight. And don't get it confused. I'm not saying let's ignore local law 94. I fought for that in 2017. We don't want illegal conversions. We want to make sure that micro units are used in the correct manner. This is a great way to do so. And we can't have this conversation without our aging population. Just in 10 years, from 2007 to 2017, the 65 and older population boomed by nearly 250,000 people in New York City. 20% of our seniors are living in poverty. We have to become more innovative on how we connect our seniors. We have to look in the area of supported senior home sharing. The New York Foundations for Senior Home Sharing Programs is funded by patchwork of grants. We need to give them a designated stream of funding so they can continue this important initiative. We have almost 170,000 bedrooms that seniors can rent out, intergenerational rentals to allow young people who are in college or starting out and have that connection with our seniors. Many of our seniors are lonely. Lonely is a clear sign of some of the social determinants of health and how we can do a better job of ensuring that our seniors are living a healthy lifestyle. And we can't ignore social adult daycares. It's an untapped resource that not only for seniors, but anyone that's 21 or that's over 21 with long-term care. Social adult daycares, let's remove the barriers that's preventing them from being part of our homeless issues that we're facing. And so I want to thank you for allowing me to come here. And the people I introduced to you in this room serve two purposes. One, because I hear the scuttlebutt. Eric may have the pedigree, but he hasn't built a team around him. You're wrong. You're so busy sometimes looking up on the deck of the Titanic, looking at the teams that have historically moved the chairs around. Just go into the hull, and you'll see my people rolling up their sleeves, fixing the hole in the ship and putting it on, placing it on the right course. I'm using non-traditional people to solve a non-traditional future in this city. I'm like an iceberg. The tip is what you see above the water. The real mass is below the water. And I'm going to get the job done. We're not trying to look outside the box. We're going to destroy the box. That's what's needed in the 21st century. In closing, 2 years before his tragic passing, my friend Jack Maple spoke to Government Technology magazine on the impact of CompStat and what it has had, what sociologists has named the Great Crime Decline. When asked for his vision of the future, Jack said, "This should not be limited to the police department. It should involve every city agency, the fire department, the building department, the transportation department. Everyone should be contributing and coordinating." Jack Maple was right in 1999. 2 decades later, we beat crime in the 1900s. We can beat other intractable problems like homelessness and the shortage of affordable housing in the 2000s. We need to deploy resources proactively, solve problems preemptively. We can make real progress in the city. We can't make real progress until we commit to governing New York in real time. New Yorkers don't wait. We are stallions. We do not lead from the pack. We lead the pack. Let's go upstream together, and let's continue to build a great city and a great place. Thank you very much.
So we have time for a quick question or two. Mr. Borough President, you started by referencing recent coverage about remarks you made about people going back to Iowa or Ohio. I want to ask, do you really feel that way? And can you say anything more about that?
Thank you very much. On the campaign trail, you experience political gaffes. And a sentence is a gaffe. But the essence of my comments feeds into what I'm doing with Breaking Bread, Building Bonds. We are having 100 dinners, 10 people at a table. Every individual at that dinner will come from a different ethnic group, a different background. This was something in response to the hate crimes among Jewish residents and other residents. And trust me when I tell you, I want people around that table from Iowa, from Ohio, from Nebraska, and everywhere. My message to New Yorkers, the problems we're facing are so substantial. We must come to communities and be part of the communities. You cannot build communities within communities. And my articulation at the National Action Network and 5 other events I spoke at that day talked about the real pain on the ground. And anyone who has followed me in my professional life, I've never moved away from the challenging, painful, and difficult conversations. There's a real concern on what gentrification is doing for this city. And those who try to paint it as whites or blacks, gentrification is not a color, it's a mindset. It's a separation for communities that were there already. We can't be Christopher Columbus and believe we discovered New York. We were here. We need to be part of New York City. And that was what my remarks was about.
All right, we have time for one more. Billy?
Mr. Burp, Borough President, thank you for the incredible speech and vision. I'm here with our newest police commissioner. Welcome to Abney, Commissioner Mcdermott. And we've had a lot of conversations about what's going on in criminal justice reform. There was an article that came out this morning, a Siena poll, now indicating, which I think we all feel, that the laws passed last year have swung too far, and that we need to look at ways to moderate them and balance them so that they address the underlying concerns that were part of the law, but also deal with the real-time data that's showing people are being put back onto the street very quickly and then committing crimes again. I was just wondering what your vision is and what your thoughts are and how to make sure that we continue upstream and continue our low crime rate.
Thank you. Over at the table where other guests are located is a good friend, Chief Phil Banks, who's the chief of the department during those difficult years, as well as Captain St. Ford and Dana, who's also there. Captain St. Ford is one of my commanders in the precinct, and his thought-provoking, innovative way of addressing crime, I think that the city needs to hear. Oftentimes, when we grab a young man, 13, 14, 15 years old, and they have a gun, we debrief them about other crimes. We never debrief them on what's happening in their life. Are they homeless? Are they unemployed? Have they been sexually abused? We never go that deeper, and his motto is so important. But also, we need to look at what we did in Albany. Yes, we needed bail reform. But if you do an analysis of the list of crimes that we are saying no bail should be for, I'm concerned about those crimes. I don't believe a person who commit a misdemeanor, a petty crime, they steal because they're hungry, or they do something because of their social issues, is one thing. But when you tell someone that they can go into a house and you hear your daughter scream from the room, and you run to her bedroom, and that person flees from that bedroom holding her bag, and that person is not eligible for bail because it's a burglary, I'm concerned about that. If two people can rob someone and assimilate that they have a gun or fall into a category of a robbery too, and they're not held for bail, I'm concerned about that. Bail should not be an economic decision maker, but it should be based on, is that person going to continue to be a threat to society? We need to give the judges the discretion to make that determination on those particular crimes. I don't know who believes manslaughter, robbery, and burglary are nonviolent felonies. They need to speak to some of the complainants that I have spoken to throughout my life. We need to be strategic when we make public safety decisions. We must be thoughtful, and the combination of having someone like Captain St. Ford in the room, or someone like Dana, someone like Phil Banks, to be a balance in the conversation so we can reach the right place. We must be safe. Public safety is a prerequisite to prosperity. That is how we got here, and we can't dismantle the things we use to get here and go backwards. And I think sometimes we do that far too often.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming. Please join me in thanking the Borough President.